Benjamin can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
Welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of A View from the Top Floor. Today, we're going to do a little street talk once again. Obviously, I'm not really, if you can tell by looking, I'm not on the streets of Manhattan today. But I am outdoors, I'm not in the studio, and just kind of hanging out and reflecting on a lunch I previously had this week. So Jeremy and I met with Mike Ciampo for a lunch, and we had scheduled this with the intentions of we're going to sit down and we're going to record a really nice podcast. And we had all the gear set up, and we were ready to go. That said, after about 5.5 to 6 hours of a conversation, we never hit record because it was one of those conversations that it was not that it was personal, but it was just brothers catching up, talking, reflecting, and throwing around some stories of past fires, about the job, the love of the job, where Mike is today, what his future is, how retirement's been treating him, the process he's been going through to get to where he is today. And if you don't know who Mike Ciampo is, obviously, I wouldn't say you're living under a rock, but you're probably living under a rock. For those of you that don't know who Mike is, please do the due diligence to find him through fire engineering. He has so much information to offer, and he's just a humble, incredible man. And that was the point of the lunch was when we just sat down to talk. We kind of were just catching up, but catching up went on to be about, like I said, like multiple hours where we didn't even get a chance to dive into what we were going to do as far as not quite of an interview, but just kind of document that situation. For me, there was a couple takeaways that I just kind of want to talk about. The first thing was, it's funny when you actually get to a certain point in your career when like the tides go in and the tides go out, and it's constantly changing. And every time that tide comes in, the job's a little bit different. But to sit in the presence of Mike and just hear him speak of true kindness, it was not that it was remarkable. It's exactly what I expected from him, but it's just a way of looking at this job through such a professional manner that's what the fire service is about. It's not about mustaches, leather helmets, hoorah, aggressive this, search that. It's about true kindness and being good at your job, just straight up being a professional. And something we did talk about was what makes an aggressive firefighter. And for years I've always said, like, well, to me, aggression comes through, at least on the fire floor, a series of mistakes that you've made that you can compile into one. And then when you make that mistake, you don't make that mistake again. So then you true dial in professionalism, which allows you to be somewhat aggressive on a fire. To use the word aggression in the fire sense. But really pure aggression on the fire ground, I think, comes from simply doing your job. And this is something that when I was teaching with Bob Presler in Alabama this past March, he asked me at dinner, he just said, what's aggressive firefighting to you? And I gave him this whole long theory of mistakes and humility. And in reality, he just looked at me and kind of giggled and said, isn't it just about doing your job? And there's so much to that. And that's what Mike Ciampo brings to the table, is just doing your job and being good at it. But when you're good at it, there's a sense of kindness that comes behind it. If it makes sense, I don't know. But just to be in his presence, that's the kind of aura he puts off in the reality of true professionalism in the fire service. Something that also hit me on the drive home was, like I have a library of books, of mentors, of books that I've studied over the years. And it's pretty incredible to go through where I am to my point of my career in my life today. And it's to be able to go into that library and walk past books by authors, by people that when I go now to my cell phone, they're my most recent calls. my most recent text messages. So it's about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I guess I'm just incredibly lucky to have those people in my life where it really is, like I say, the senior man is in the palm of your hand. Well, for me, that is so true. And everything I do through Top Floor Tactics and the message I brought to you and the information I brought to you, yeah, a lot of it's from my mistakes, but a lot of it is from being at fires like Mike Ciampo, like Bobby Athanas, guys that I've watched from afar for so many years and not even realize I was truly watching them. So being in the moment of a fire is something that we have to remember to do because we're so quick. Like if we're not the first to company, sometimes we kind of get not complacent, but we kind of get turned off by being at that fire, especially if it's a bitter cold night or the middle of the night and you're the RIT team or the fast truck and your mind starts to wander and you're like, man, I got to get up early for my side job tomorrow. I got to pick up the kids. You got to get out of this fire. I got to get back to the firehouse, And that's understandable. And I think if we don't admit that we've all been there, we're probably lying. But take those moments, especially as a RIT team or a fast truck, to be in the moment because a fire is a series of moments within a moment, right? So if you can dial into that moment and study the fire with the passion like we study so many things, right? So if you're into golf, people study that green on the back nine like they're playing for some amazing amount of money, right? Like the big cup, the US Open. In reality, it's just a fun game with your friends a lot of times, but that back nine, how important that is to someone who is passionate about golf. That's how we have to be passionate about the fire ground. So take that moment to be at a fire. I mean, think about how amazing that is where like you're invited to a fire that's not necessarily your fire and you get to be a part of it. And even if by being a part of it is by watching and studying that, okay, this building's on fire. I should know where everybody is operating. And kind of like playing chess in your mind with that moment. There's so much training there's so much training to come from that, especially for the young firefighters. So take that moment as a senior firefighter, not to have your mind wander about the side job or picking up the kids or getting back to the bunk, to tell them and educate them on what's happening next and why things are happening and why chiefs are making certain moves, right? I really believe that chess is the ultimate parallel to the fire ground, and that's a great opportunity to sit back and play chess with the game of firefighting. Sitting with Mike the other day also, kind of telling some stories back and forth about certain fires, and he would bring up a fire and I'd be like, oh, I was at that fire. And I would bring up a fire. He's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I was at that fire because where I worked as a firefighter is where Mike did his entire career. From firefighter to lieutenant, it's like we ran in together. We were in the same arena of firefighting per se, as far as buildings and neighborhoods. So being in that moment and just breathing the air on that fire ground, like having that moment and sharing that moment with so many different firefighters, it's pretty amazing. Like if you think about it, like we're put in this world, right? And I think I read this quote somewhere. I'm not sure where I got it from, but it's pretty amazing that these are our people, right? And we're sharing this life with so many people. But if you focus in on that, and we're sharing this career with only a few, right? And a few of the luckies. I feel truly the few of the lucky ones in this world get to be firefighters, and even the luckier ones get to work in arenas like where I got to work at fires with Mike Ciampo and Bobby Athanas, where I didn't necessarily was focusing on them as individuals, but just the tempo of that fire. I know they set. I know that today from speaking with them, but looking back then, I didn't realize why fires were going out so well, maybe, or things were going so polished per se, like true professional firefighting. And that's because those guys were setting the tempo, setting the cadence, and ultimately setting the standards. So we have to pay attention to these standards and be at every fire, mentally and physically. Like, again, it's such an honor to go to any fire, especially when it's not our fire. Sometimes you don't want to go. Just understand it's a blessing to be able to go and learn and be in the arena of senior guys or any guys that are willing to set that tempo and willing to show you what true professionalism is about. Because fast forward 20 years later, here I am talking to you about this, and it comes from those moments from going to fires with the greats. I don't think that necessarily makes anyone a great firefighter, but it surely sets you up for success if you can really focus on doing the right thing. And that's what it's all about, is just is doing the right thing. And the right thing in the firehouse, again, from watching these people, and then transforming that to the fire ground and watching how they operate, but not just watching, being in that moment within moments of a fire. So I did a recent post on, what was it called? Blurred Vision? No, not Blurred Vision. My most recent one. Anyway, about being the loudest guy in the room. And, with firefighters, I understand that there is a level of type A personality. And when we get into an environment of multiple type A personalities, sometimes it can get a bit dicey. But just understand that many times that if you're in the crosshairs of this one firefighter or a series of firefighters that are not necessarily breaking your balls, but just not having that absolute kindness like you would see from a Mike Ciampo or a Bobby Thanos, that let your tools do your talking. That's the bottom line. Like, don't engage, don't interact, laugh it off like you're supposed to. It's the kitchen, it's the event, whatever it is, you just laugh it off. There's no reason to take it to the next level. But when you go to the fire, that's when you prove yourself. That's where you prove your self-worth. And that's where ultimately, I would say, you will elevate higher than the loudest mouth in the room, because the guys that are more quiet, they're observing everything, what's going on, they're paying attention, and they're learning. Where the guys on the flip side probably have a little bit of insecure about them. Not all of them, but there's probably some insecurities that when the tones go off, they go out the door. They're kind of trying to mask that before they get to the fire, so there's not an embarrassment of not knowing your job. So if you're in that guy's crosshairs, it happens to all of us. I've been there a series of times throughout my career. You're in those crosshairs, and I've always found value in just kind of letting it roll off your back and just proving yourself at the fire. So I guess that's it. Just two things I wanted to jump on. Like I said, we had that podcast scheduled for today, but for sometimes friendship takes precedence over recording a podcast and getting it out. I promise there will be another podcast with Mike Ciampo and Jeremy, and we're going to sit down, we're going to talk, and kind of dive into some things that we did speak about during that lunch, but again, it just wasn't the right time. Again, life's about timing. The fire ground's about timing, and it's about respecting and manipulating that time. And that's how we can progressively move forward in anything we do in life. All right, guys. That's it. Stay safe. Have a good one.